Welcome to Access to Experts on Location. I'm Dick Heatherton, and I'm really honored to have with us today John Harricharan. John is a best-selling author, and he's also a guru, which we're going to be getting into a little bit later. But John, thank you so much for joining us.
And it is my pleasure. Dick.
Oh, my pleasure, sir. You know, you've done so many different things. Many people think of you, you're a spiritual advisor, but also there's that other side, which is very corporate. And one of the things I'd like to get into right now is maybe you could tell us about 5 of the biggest mistakes people make in trying to get a speaker, a seminar leader. What would you recommend, or perhaps maybe people who are thinking about getting someone they ought to consider? Say, maybe you look into this, look into that. What would you suggest?
First thing I think they should do is make sure the speaker knows what he's talking about.
Okay.
Absolutely important.
Okay, so how do you know that?
Well, by just looking at where he or she has spoken before, a sample of what they talk about. Very important thing in speaking. Books. If the person is an author, there's almost like instant credibility, which brings up the next point. Answer to the second. Number 2, is there credibility there? Take, for example, if somebody is just learning the ropes, you don't want that person to be speaking to a 1,000 people audience unless it's one of these multi-level things, which is okay too. A lot of people learn there. And so there has got to be credibility, believability. They've got to speak from their heart. You've got to find that out about the person just by talking. The other day I was hired for a wonderful, wonderful speaking engagement in Eastern Europe. Great fee. I love that, by the way. Great fee, all the perks and everything else. And I asked them, where did they find me? And they said, on the internet. I said, well, there are lots of speakers on the internet. Why did you call me? And they said, well, we liked what we read. We felt you could do a great job for us, motivating our people, bringing them hope, and so forth. And I thought, if you could do that with every speaker, if you could find that out. Then they requested just a 5-minute conversation with me. And in that time, they said, we would be honored to have you speak for us. Now, what made that happen?
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
What are those elements in that 5 minutes that people said, oh, this is the person we need?
It is because I was not attached to outcomes. I, as the speaker, it didn't matter to me. It was like having what I'd call a divine don't give a damn attitude of whether I got it or not.
Let me write that down. Divine don't give a damn attitude.
And not being attached to the outcome of whether I was going to get hired for that or not. And when you get to that point as a speaker or as a person, then you become more yourself. You speak from the heart. So I spoke from the heart, and I ended up by saying, oh, by the way, I'm not tough to work with at all, so let me know what you want to do, and I'll check into this and see if I can do it. Because if you don't do that, then you become offended at the smallest things. And the only way you can be offended is if you're offendable. But if some of my heroes are people like
what?
Like Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus the Christ, and so forth, and I've studied them and listened to what they say. And I remember Lincoln once said something to the effect that you know, if you like that sort of thing, that's the sort of thing you'd like. Somebody asked him why he wasn't insulted, why he didn't feel bad when his Secretary of War called him an overgrown baboon from Illinois. And he said, you know, gentlemen, I never considered whether I was a baboon or not. I mean, the measure of the person not to be offended. And when they said, why don't you fire your Secretary of War? His answer was brilliant. He said, what? Fire the best Secretary of War this nation has ever seen? It shows the measure of the person when you are not offended by little, silly things.
John Harricharan, it all comes from the heart, we know that, and also the mind. But with platform skills, along with having the heart and the mind, also influences can also be very, very valuable. And you shared the platform with Odd Mandino, Eric Butterworth, Deepak Chopra, and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Yes.
What did you pick up from them, and what did they pick up, do you think, from you? What did they pick up from you?
I'm glad you phased it that way, because a lot of people who have heard that I know Muhammad Ali I knew Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. We were very, very close friends. I was the vice president of her center, the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Center. It's something I did to help her out. She wrote the introduction for one of my books, and we traveled a lot with Deepak and others. And people said, well, oh, you must be so fortunate. Think of the things you learned from them. And I smile and I say, yes, we all learned from one another. And I learned lots of things from Elizabeth. I learned from Deepak, but I'm sure also that it wasn't a one-way street. It's a case where 1 and 1 happens to be greater than 2.
What would you say is the biggest mistake people make when they start on a new course?
Many times they think they know everything. Reminds me of the guy who came out of college with his degree, his first degree, ran out and he said, here, world, here I come, I got my AB degree, and the world says, sit down, son, I'll teach you the rest of the alphabet. So they come out and they think they know exactly what they want to do. We cannot know exactly what we want to do. We cannot know exactly about anything. I'm a scientist, and there are things like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle.
Now, what's that?
That's a little law that was created by a scientist, which says if we know the momentum of the electron, we cannot know exactly where it is. If we know exactly where it is, we cannot know this. So we cannot know everything about life. That's why life is what it is. And that's why there are good days, and that's why there are bad days. And the secret is, or the unsecret is, when there are good days, enjoy them. When there are bad days, tolerate them, because good days will end, bad days will end.
How do you tolerate bad days? Sometimes that's very easy to say.
Actually, it is not difficult. It is rather simple. You develop what I call good or great mental self-defense techniques, little mind games, and things that people laugh at, like affirmations. You repeat a verse, a poem in your mind. You become quiet for just a little while. That's why my book, The Power Pause, which has become an international hit, a system of dealing with the 3 problems we have on Earth: money, health, relationship. And they're very simple things to do. I always say anything is easy if you know how to do it. And to know how to do that, there's simple breathing exercises when you get very worried about this or that and you want to fight the world. If you're going to fight anybody, don't fight the world, you're going to lose. So you get quiet and let the world take care of itself. The universe has a way of taking care of itself. Remember, it was here longer than any of us. I think happiness is our birthright. We are comics. We are playful creatures of the universe, but we get into a situation where we become hypnotized by this or that or the other. We bump into a terrible marriage and we think it's, look what she's doing to me. We bump into a situation at work and we, instead of checking into it as to really what is happening, we tend to blame the other side. Whereas it's like the case of the guy, every day he was at lunch and he'd be yelling and yelling and yelling and saying, peanut butter and jelly, again, I can't stand it, I can't stand it. Peanut butter and jelly, every day, peanut butter and jelly. So all his friends went away. At lunchtime he had to be eating alone, but they could hear him yelling, peanut butter and jelly again. And one day one of the guys says, let's go, I'm gonna go over and talk to him. And he goes over to this guy and says, you know, it's easy. Why don't you ask your wife to pack something else? He says, I can't do that. The guy says, why? He says, because I pack my own lunch. So it's like these problems. We think it's out there. They aren't. They're within us.
Yeah. You cover such a wide and vast array of expertise. I want to get more into the business realm right now. What is it that you feel people think that they know, that they don't know? And as someone who is an advisor, as someone who is a consultant, a person who can oversee things, say, oh, come on. Is there any one thing that you find in the business realm, or for that matter, let's even bring it in the personal realm, that People think that they know, and they really don't know.
Actually, I have found, this is going to sound esoteric. Actually, it might even sound silly. But I believe that people think they know how to get along with people, how to build relationships and maintain them. And I think the greatest problem we have is people have no idea how to do that.
And how do they do that?
You start by, when you're talking to somebody, when you listen to people. We have become a nation of non-listeners.
Oh.
I mean, today was a good example. There are lots of people who are coming to me, and I'm trying to they tell me their problems, and I'm going to give them a solution or a possible solution. As soon as I start saying it, they keep going on, and so I'm quiet and I nod, and there they go. They never listen. They never, they're so wrapped up in themselves. Now here's another unsecret. I love unsecrets or anti-secrets, because the secret is there are no secrets. And the thing is, I don't think we could ever outgive the universe, because if you try to outgive the universe, you give it $100, it gives you 1,000. So it comes down to this: the good that you do for yourself. The evil that you do is yours alone. So if there's any truth in that, and there's enough evidence to show there is, then doesn't it, even if I'm selfish, isn't it to my advantage to do good? And if the evil that I do to myself, why would I want to hurt you? Because if I did, I steal from you, I take your job, I destroy your career, am I not doing that to myself? And in the long run, it's proven to be true. It's a spiritual truth which I think is as practical as anything.
John Harricharan, I wish we had more time. This has been wonderful. If people wanted to contact you, how could they do so?
They could find me at my website. Just send an email to john@insight2000.com.
John@insight2000.com.
INSIGHT 2000.com.
John Harricharan, this has been wonderful. It really has. I thank you so much for joining us on Access to Experts on Location, and I'm Dick Heatherton.
Thank you, Dick. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, John. Really enjoyed it.